Thanks for listening and subscribing to episode 260 of the Clive Barker podcast. Jose and Ryan are joined by Markus to continue our discussion of the art book series with Clive Barker Imaginer 5. Welcome, this is episode 200. I yelled that out, didn't I? Yelled that really loud. Welcome, this is episode 260 of the Clive Barker podcast. We're talking about Imaginer 5 and 6, Clive Barker's Imaginer 5 and 6, and today we're hosted by Markus.
Hello.
And Jose.
Hey, guys.
And I'm Ryan. So, looking at these, I mean, Markus, you probably already know this, but I've been unwrapping them, as as we get to them. They seem like they're getting better every time.
I personally think they are. It seems like Phil and Sarah are really, like hitting their stride as it goes, and discovering how they really want to do this. And the layouts get better. The introductions get more almost philosophical in their dissection of Clive's work and along with the quotes from Clive himself about his own philosophy and art and whatnot.
Yeah, they to me the 5 and 6 introductions are almost it's almost like a biography or a chronology of what was going on while he was painting Abarat and stuff. And they're very thematically connected to Abarat and the beginning of how Clive started painting Abarat.
Whereas 7 and 8 are more about where he's at now. Oh. But these are about, the inception of Abarat and really Clive honing his painting.
His trajectory as an artist and his exhibits that he started making,
And 5 and 6. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ryan.
I was just going to say, but 6 even goes back to like 1985.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, briefly. But 5 and 6 are the only two volumes to also feature the 30-inch gatefolds for the triptychs.
Oh, 7 and 8 didn't do that?
No, 7 and 8. I think all the main triptychs are actually in here, to where they didn't have to do that for 7 and 8.
Oh, okay.
And they are amazing, aren't they?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, they are.
Yeah, I found myself noting them down, to talk about, and it's like I don't want to just say, well, every single gatefold is, needs.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're also good, and that's part of why they're set out like that.
Yeah, and that's the thing is when you have these pieces that are that massive, it does it an injustice to shrink it down just to the 2 pages because then you don't get to see as much detail.
Yeah, so I agree with you. The layouts are getting better, and there's nothing better for someone consumed by ennui as I am during this lockdown than to unwrap like Ryan did a couple of books and just lose myself here for a couple of afternoons. And they are something. They're tremendous. I mean, the essays have been a lot of the stuff I knew, but a lot of the stuff it's like interesting to see it structured and explained, and put these quotes from Clive Barker put into context, a kind of a chronological context.
Yeah,
and revisit this artistic, trajectory that he did. Number 5 opens with some of the early exhibits that he's done, especially the ones with La Luz de Jesus Gallery.
Yeah.
And how some of these paintings sometimes they're very personal, and especially these with Sanborn. This little character, Sanborn in adolescence, Sanborn in middle age. It's almost like a little story. I think they show 2 pictures here. I'm not sure if there's a third, but it's about a young person who discovers they're queer and they're coming to terms with their sexuality. So in the first one, he's kind of holding his genitalia, he's kind of hiding his genitalia with a mask that has a very phallic nose. It kind of depicts like a 15-year-old still coming to terms with who he is. And then there's Sanborn in middle age. He's kind of trapped inside a cage, right? Like a cage with and he's copulating with what seems like a what would seem like a woman, but the woman has no face. There's no connection there to the body. It's just a mechanical act.
He's also kind of become more of a monster in middle age than he was as an adolescent.
Yeah. Yeah, his body is becoming almost like transmutated into like an insect form.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But so, they start talking about the imagination of Clive Barker, which was something he did in the Laguna Art Museum. And I did find for this, I was looking around on the internet, and I did find on academia.edu, I found a PDF version of the catalog for the exhibition, and I'm gonna attach that to the show notes here.
Okay.
So it's like 7 pages, but it's got some of Clive's ink drawings, and there's like an introduction and some text. It's just 7 pages long, but it's interesting to add to people who might want to read that as a companion to this introduction. So it was. Mm-hmm.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it was 1995, and they mention here how some of the figures in this exhibit and some of the ones he did in La Luz de Jesus are kind of like these yellowish, gaunt, like male figures, and they look a little like lost or depressed or melancholy.
Yeah. Which Clive even notes.
Right. And he talks about here on page 841, the introduction, he says, "I'm not a melancholy guy. However, I think things are going wrong in the world, which is a cause for great sadness. I've lost a lot of friends to the AIDS virus that inevitably awakens a sense of the elegiac within me." And it's 1995. He had just lost his cousin Mark to AIDS. Yeah. So that was
which
is
referenced pretty heavily in Magica.
Oh yeah. And also he wrote Sacrament at the time, which was where he decided to write a novel that spoke to his feelings of loss.
Yeah.
And and all the lives of gay men whose lives had been cut short by the AIDS epidemic. So so that's Clive's spiritual mental state at the time.
Yeah.
So that's.
He even says, as a storyteller, I have a responsibility to write about that, paint it, reflect it in all my media I work in regards to that melancholy that you mentioned. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and he wrote himself out of one of these melancholy periods also by doing Chiliad, a meditation.
Yes, which was, a reflection definitely on a deep, deep depression.
Yeah, on the early 90s, that when AIDS was becoming a thing that was affecting him and people he loved. So that comes to it. Kind of now that once you contextualize these paintings with these introductions, that kind of helps you understand a little better and see a little more into the paintings. So it might be a completely subjective, a projection that you're doing, but at the same time, I don't think it is, because the way that it's written here, it kind of like leads you into doing these secondary readings of the paintings, and it's very, very interesting. And I think it's a perfect example of how these introductions really assist in enjoying these paintings and understanding them a little better.
Well, one thing I really love about Imaginer 5 in particular is it's really, really thematic, in that almost all the paintings that are showcased within really reflect the introduction, because the introduction is mostly about, it really centers on the flesh and the forbidden, and how Clive has always that's always been the main thing that drives his imagination and from that the works that he creates. I mean, if you look at almost all of his works, there's some sort of transformation, this transmutation, this apotheosis. There's something to do with the flesh and the spirit transforming into something greater or something different. And not only his remarks in the introduction, but also the paintings really show that the forbidden and this religiosity with that. Clive notes, he says, quote, "We look at our bodies and our bodies are a problem to us. They age, they betray us, they change shape, they grow tumorous, they require constant fixing. We live in what is, after the age of 18, a decaying system. And as you guys mentioned in Sanborn and adolescence and Sanborn in middle ages, those are two perfect examples of this mutation, Sanborn does kind of grow monstrous, and
there you go.
Is that a physical manifestation of the body turning against the soul of the flesh, rebelling?
Right, exactly. Like I think that's a great connection there that you did, and that's exactly what I was trying to say. That sometimes these introductions, they really give you a sense of it's like a guiding hand into understanding a little better.
Yeah.
Because an artist doesn't create things in a vacuum. An artist creates things according to how he sees the world, and at this point in time, Clive was coming to grips with that. So, and this is very focused on flesh and the one flesh exhibit and, sexuality and how you deal with that. And I wouldn't go so far as to say that from 18 on you're in a decaying system, but definitely you do. Once you reach a certain age, you start figuring out that, hey, I can't do things I used to do anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, flesh and cells are constantly breaking down and repairing themselves, but all bodies are in a state of some sort of decay from birth. We're all on this, and
then there's a lot
trajectory.
Yeah, and there's a lot to say about, your body being changing the way you look at your body, right? Because when you're 20, your body is your playground, right? Your body is what you use to alter your consciousness, and you drink, you smoke, you
abuse it. You do dumb things. You take it for granted, the vitality that you have.
You enjoy it. You enjoy other bodies, and then after a while, you're like, okay, this is like a theme. This is like a roller coaster park, but now I have to maintain the roller coasters because, the paint is chipping or, one of the carts is like coming off the rails. And it's like, and then after a certain point, it becomes a matter of maintenance. And then you go into a deeper state. You experience things a little more, it's more of a degustation. It's not just a swallowing down of strawberries and chocolate by the mouthful. You just enjoy it a little better, and you kind of taste it a little better, and you learn a little more about yourself and how you work. And I think Clive at this point in '93, he was in his mid 40s, which is the same period I find myself in, and yourself, Ryan, and. I think we're coming to grips with certain things that, maybe we need to change in our daily lives. And
And Clive even mentions that he didn't start painting until he was in his 40s. And, he says that he was growing tired and weary of the habits that he had. So he was grateful that he didn't start really painting these large oil paintings until he was in his 40s, because it was a revitalization, energizing for his imagination.
Yeah, so he was coming off of writing a few hours a day, and then he would at the end of the day, he would put down the pen and he would go down to his studio, because at the time he had just purchased the other house next to the house where he lived. And some of the canvases at this point were still pretty small. They were like maybe 24 by 24 or something like that.
Yeah, they were 24 by 24, which became the original Abarat paintings he was making.
And then he started making, bigger paintings. And then he had a space where it says here, a space where he can, just walk in there and be like, hey, look at the mess I made. And I don't have to clean it up. Nobody's telling me, hey, clean up this mess because, you're painting in your house, right? I mean, I think.
Well, he bought a whole other house to do that in.
Yeah. He mentions that he can be kind of a slob, and that is the environment that he likes to work in, and that in that environment, not only does he not have to clean up and that he can, make a mess, but he can also make whatever he wants, and there's no one to say, what is that? Why are you making that? There's no one to question him. There's no one to interfere or, judge him for what he's creating.
And there's no interruption in the process either. You don't have to stop and clear the table because people need to use it for dinner. And it's like something, if you've been in a relationship, you're moved in with someone, your partner, or your wife, sometimes you make a mess on things, especially if you're, moving books around or moving stuff around or whatever. You decide to paint, like yourself, Markus. I mean, you paint. So sometimes you're painting, and I don't know how big is your house, but sometimes you're like, well, I got to put this stuff away because now I got to use this space for something else. And once you have your own space, it's all the rules are, rules there. You can just let it flow.
Especially is a very, very messy thing. I mean, I just do it in my room, and there's paint spatter all over my Mac and all over my TV, but it is what it is, of just it being a messy thing. But it also seems like painting is a palate cleanser for Clive away from the writing, because the writing is so logical, and he mentions that writing is just a big puzzle for him, and it's structuring and putting this thing together, and it takes a lot of mental energy. Whereas painting is just taking away all of the mental thought, all of the mental stress, and just letting your emotions flow. Letting your hand guide. And he says, quote, "Most nights I'll approach an empty canvas with only the vaguest idea of what I want to paint: a landscape, an animal, a face. Often not even that. It'll be the last viable color on my scattered paper plate palettes that will get me started, or simply the first arbitrary marks I make. Is there a picture in my head somewhere waiting to appear on the canvas but hidden from me? I don't discount the possibility. But normally when I'm painting, I feel like it's just flowing through me. I'm a conduit for it from some other place." So, it's the antithesis of what writing is for him.
Right, because writing is sometimes very structured, and you need to keep track of the characters, what they're doing, what chapter you're on, how this is going to, how this is going to play out. And then when you're painting, we talk about sometimes getting into a fugue state, right? When we're doing something that we like, and you dedicate yourself to it, and your mind kind of wanders, and you're just letting it flow out of you. And this fugue state, it's also, if you do transcendental meditation, I think some of this process is what David Lynch calls catching the big fish. Yeah. Where your mind is like an ocean, and all of a sudden, you get these ideas that pop out of nowhere. You're not even sure what you're thinking about at the time or why that pops in your mind. But once you get it, that's the big fish, that you get the idea, and then it's up to you to take that idea, and then you can do something with it. Or you can just throw the fish back. That's up to you.
Like a lot of creatives get, their ideas just doing the most mundane things, whether it's taking a shower or driving. You have these or taking a walk, you have these hurrah moments of just something just magically coming in your head when you're not forcing it, when you're doing something mundane and, like you said, almost in a trance. Or like painting is a lot like driving, where you're not consciously thinking of like, oh, I'm driving home from work, I need to do this, I need to, it's just so natural. You've done it so many times that you're just working on autopilot.
Yeah And I think in sports they have something like that too. Is it the Gestalt, right, where you kind of move into a feeling of losing track of time, and all you feel is the moment. Yeah, time kind of slows down, and
the exterior world is kind of irrelevant to what you're doing or you're creating.
Yeah, you get outside of your own normal everyday thoughts, and
So that's wonderful that's how he came up with the idea of the Abarat, because once he started painting all these characters, and like you said, sometimes he would start with a shape or something. He didn't even know exactly where he was going, but he would come up with a character. And then it's like, once you're done with that, you look at it, and you can look at a canvas and see a whole bunch of things. But usually if you make something the way Clive makes it, which is more, most of it is figurative. I mean, some of the stuff is a little more abstract, but most of it usually has some sort of character, some sort of landscape, some sort of, thing going on. Mm-hmm. And your brain immediately starts trying to race and find out what's the meaning behind this. What's the story? Who is this character? What is this monster? Are they friends or foes? Is this guy eating it or kissing him? Your brain just starts racing. And I guess that's how these ideas came to be. And that's how one day he painted Caspar Wolfswinkel, and that's what set it off, really.
And it was interesting to hear that his original thought was to make a book of children's fables or nursery. What did he call them?
Yeah, it's some sort of book of short stories, and he realizes that they're not disparate stories, that they're all part of something larger and more grand,
part of the same one big interconnected world.
Yeah, but looking at the painting of Caspar Wolfswinkel and knowing that the initial project that he was supposed to be doing was an erotic piece for a gallery, and this came out. It's really interesting. But I mean, he just kind of, as he calls it, he takes a line for a walk, and you see what comes up. It's an instinctual thing, It seems like Clive doesn't. He doesn't think, okay, I'm going to put a cat here and put, several different hats stacked on top of each other on this weird guy. He just kind of follows his gut and sees where it goes.
That same poster on 853 with Caspar Wolfswinkel, about this art exhibit.
Yeah.
I have that poster that Mark gave me in at Clive's house.
Oh, that's cool.
Signed and framed.
Wonderful.
And stuff.
Oh, that's really cool.
2002.
Yeah.
So this is also when he started experimenting a little bit with painting, and he started doing stuff like, I remember looking at the old CliveBarker.com website, the Lost Souls website, and you can still find those One Flesh exhibit, The Weird and the Wicked. They still have pretty much a good selection of images that were shown in those exhibits. You can still find them there. And I do remember looking at these mixed media things that he was doing at the time, because he was also working on photography.
Yeah.
And then he would paint on some of these pictures.
Yes.
And he would embellish them and turn them into something different. And you see some of those here on 848, 849. He's got, there's a picture of someone, and then there's some painting around it, and some embellishments done with paint. And there's wings painted on a naked guy here, Little John and the Angel, that he worked in 98. And that was interesting. That was also when I started seeing that Clive also did photography. And I know that he's probably done photography all his life, but this is when I actually started seeing more of the photography emerging in his art.
That the one in the upper corner, the mirror, isn't that Mark's friend, the special effects guy?
Oh, Stephen
Imhoff. Yeah,
doesn't look like him. Doesn't look like his nose. No, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I love that photo though. Well, that's from 1998, so I'm going to say probably not.
Yeah, of course not. No. Yeah.
But I mean the fact that
he was a teenager at the time.
Yeah, but the fact that Clive takes models and turns them into human canvases, and not only paints the model, but then paints the actual photograph of said model on top of that is such a really cool effect.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about the idea of the flesh transforming and the spirit, coming out of the spirit and the flesh kind of transforming. Yeah,
and one thing that I do want to read here is Clive's statement in regards to the One Flesh exhibit. He says, quote, "Flesh is our indisputable commonality. Whatever our race, our religion, our politics, we are faced every morning with the fact of our bodies, their frailties, their demands, their desires. And yet the erotic appetites that spring from and are expressed through those bodies are so often a source of bitter dissension and division. Acts that offer a glimpse of transcendence to one group are condemned by another. We are pressured from every side, by peers, by church, by state, to accept the consensual definition of taboo. Though so often what excites our imagination most is the violation of taboo." And that's kind of what I was referring to in regards to this introduction earlier, is that all of it pretty much goes back to that idea of the taboo and the flesh and the forbidden, and those three things kind of coalesce into one overall theme of this volume that I really, really love.
it is still very strange to me that, the puritanical repression that we get every day in terms of the human form. And there's still people out there who think that, a woman breastfeeding her child is something that should be hidden. And that's rude. That's, oh, why are you doing that? That you shouldn't be showing that in public. Or, that we still can see movies where, women can be nude, but not men. Heaven forbid you look at a penis on a movie because, oh my God, that made me gay.
Violence is acceptable in that you can show, an action hero shooting up, 30 plus people and you can show blood and violence. But if you show, a breast or anything of the sort, it's automatically, rated R and, it's censored or what have you.
Or
and
like,
it's crazy.
The Westboro Baptist Church, right? Saying that, natural disasters are caused by, gays in the military.
Yeah, you're getting a lot of that right now.
Stupid idea they have.
Because
but those guys are fringe. They're fringe, but they're a fringe that kind of represents an amplification of a feeling that exists in society. But what I mean is that, in the 1920s, things were more progressive in terms of like the human form than they are now. Yeah. And it's like even in the 1980s or 1990s, it seems like things have been closing down a little bit since the 1980s because, nudity in movies used to be a lot more prevalent in the 1970s and the 1960s. Yeah. The 1960s was a big time of sexual revolution, and it didn't really go anywhere. It just petered out. And, nowadays TV and commercialism have closed down and dressed up the human form to the point where it's like you don't show it.
The yuppies took over.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
It's such a strange thing in that, sex sells, but we're also trying to mask the sexual part.
Yeah.
It's such a strange duality of what we live in.
In pop culture, pop starlets, they basically walk on stage in nothing but a bikini.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's like, well, but they get slut shamed anyway. Look at Miley Cyrus. Look at, Katy Perry, and people don't take them seriously, or they make fun of them, or they say, well, I don't think she's a good role model for kids. You kind of pushed pop starlets into having to use sex to sell their music. And now you're like,
if you do, you're damned if you don't.
Exactly.
And then it's so hard for them to keep that up, when they're in their 50s or. Yeah. Well, and it's the same with Hollywood. The male actors have a much easier time getting older than and still keeping their work.
Well, you had J-Lo and Shakira in the
the Super
halftime
Bowl
show of the Super Bowl, and J-Lo is 50, and people were like, "Oh, I don't think she should have been doing that. I'm gonna sue." That was that guy. You remember that guy that got famous because he went on Facebook and he got viral. He said that. He got aroused by the halftime show, and he wanted to sue the NFL.
Yeah.
How much of a freaking loser do you have to be?
So what did he? What was the problem?
He was a pastor. He was a pastor or something. Geez. Yeah, there's this whole crazy thing about woman is 50, she shouldn't be shaking her butt on a pole. It's like, what do you care?
Yeah,
it's like. But anyway,
it's like when people host the Oscars too. You there's always going to be people that hate it, and it's like it's a really thankless job.
Yeah,
and we're talking about straight stuff here. Never mind the queer stuff. Never mind the queer sexuality. I mean, heaven forbid, that someone needs to have a gender neutral bathroom. They're going to be like, well, what's going to be next? There's going to be guys putting on dresses to go in. No, dude, no. It's I don't know. It's just ridiculous.
To bring it back to Clive's art, that's what he revels in. That those are the things that and in regards to him having the house next door to paint in and to not have anyone around who would question what he was doing. Those are the pieces that he paints. He loves to paint. These androgynous figures that they could have breasts, but they also have a mustache and things like that, of just really blurring the lines between these things and as kind of is mentioned by Clive himself in this. It's a marriage of heaven and hell, of as Pinhead says, demons to some, angels to others. They are what you make of them, and they're beautiful for the fact that they are wholly themselves, and Clive's art is wholly what he wants it to be, and it doesn't answer to anybody. It doesn't try to conform to anything. It doesn't try to fit in any box to sell or please advertisers or what have you.
It's free.
It's completely free. And
there's a big freedom here, because hey, why can't you draw a figure with female breasts but a male face, like Mother and Child here on page 847? Clearly a face of a bearded masculine face, and yet has very heavy breasts and has a you can see the fetus inside the belly, and of course the fetus is giant penis. But
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure the fetus is a phallic fetus. But
Mother and Child, why not? And Clive says here that what he learned with painting is that he decided to stop judging himself. What liberated him into painting was just letting go. And it says here, not worrying too much about, was that a perfect line? Is that a perfect stroke? Everything is imperfect, gloriously imperfect, and imperfection is part of what gives it its energy. And he says this, if you go on YouTube, and we're going to add a link to the show notes, The Artist's Passion. It's a video that you can find on YouTube, where he says this word that's right here on page 49. So he learned how to make a mess, right? I mean, he mentioned this before in another volume, something about painting as a beautiful mess or something like that.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
Oh, just in regards to the heaven and marriage of heaven and hell thing, and him just kind of making what he wants to. The piece on 846, angels and demons dining together. You have a demon masturbating an angel underneath a table, with another demon roasting his genitals under a fire.
And the angels are eating demonic meat while the demons are eating angel wings.
Yes, and they're pinioning the little devils and such and eating them. But
so it's sort of a sacrament.
Yeah, it almost has allusions to the Last Supper in its actual display of the depiction, but it's such an interesting piece of the dark, the light, a lot of
kind of yin yang kind of stuff too.
Yeah, and I think it really is Clive just going, kind of F it, and here is this beautiful marriage of the erotic and kind of violent, and the demonic and the angelic and whatnot. But it's such an evocative piece for those reasons thematically.
And they're making, it's almost like a covenant, because they're making peace. That's why there's the demonic hand job under the table. The Buffalo Angel Wings. Yeah. At a Buffalo Angel Wings. Anyway, send us a check, B-dubs.
But the last quote that Clive says in the introduction is, he says, quote, "There are no boundaries in my work, at least not in my head. The pictures made for the Abarat book and the grim black and white images and the erotic paintings and the shaman paintings all come from the same imagination, where there is constant interplay between all these subjects."
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that it's just really wonderful to see the fact that there's no boundaries. And Jose, like you said earlier, that Clive doesn't strive to make something perfect. He doesn't try to make the perfect line or try to worry about making whatever image in his head perfect in reality. It's just him doing what feels right emotionally. And I think that's what I've taken away from Clive and Clive's art the most, is that don't try to strive for perfection, or else you're never going to you're never going to keep trying. You're just going to give up because you're going to keep feeling like you're failing.
Yeah, you're just going to set yourself up for disappointment if you keep thinking you're going to do something perfect the first time around, and nobody does anything perfect the first time around. That's just ridiculous. You have to work that muscle, just like writing. You have to imagine stuff. You have to write it down, just like painting. Sometimes you need the right tools to do the job. I mean, but even Clive says that Goya, for example, Goya sometimes he didn't really use brushes all the time. Sometimes he painted with his fingers. Sometimes he painted with his palette knife. Mm-hmm. And whatever makes the mark, right? Whatever, what was available at the time was what he would use to make the art. It wasn't just about technique. Mm-hmm. We've seen Clive sometimes make a drawing using a reed from his yard, right?
Yeah.
He just dips the reed in like paint and he starts, drawing. Yeah,
I was going to mention that Clive especially uses such unorthodox tools. Mm-hmm. I've heard that he paints with toothpaste and just all of these really strange things. And he also he uses eyedroppers instead of brushes, or like you said, reeds from his yard instead of brushes. One of the things that you'll read in the later, it's either 7 or 8, probably 8, but he says that he doesn't like painting with brushes anymore because brushes are too reliable in the results that they'll give you. Whereas he likes paint. That's interesting. So he likes doing things with unorthodox, unpredictable objects because it can be a really interesting result in what it gives you.
And that's exactly where you see Clive not being afraid of doing something different, because another painter would be like, "Well, I'm not gonna use brushes. How am I gonna do this?"
Yeah, imagine showing up to art class and the art professor says, "Okay, throw all your brushes away. We're not using them. We're going to use a reed from the garden and some toothpaste to make a painting."
Yeah.
Hey, I saw a guy paint like a tiger on someone's dusty car with nothing but a brush and dust. So
like a Q-tip, right?
Yeah. Like you can do anything. It's about what you're trying to do and how you're doing it. Sometimes it's not so much about making something perfect or permanent or using the right tools. Sometimes you just got to let it flow and another way that Clive uses to get in the moment as well was he listened to music while he was painting. Mm-hmm. He would listen to a lot of music, while he's puffing away on a cigar.
Yeah.
And
did either of you guys get that CD, Being Music?
No, I've never bought it.
I don't have it, but I think you can find it, a playlist of it on Spotify.
YouTube.
Or YouTube, yeah. There's some Diamanda Galas in there and stuff like that. Because at the time he was doing Lord of Illusions, right? So Diamanda Galas is in the soundtrack for Lord of Illusions. Yeah. And this painting, the jacket that you can see here on page 850, I think. The guy with the jacket that has like a painting in the back, and all you see is the back of his head and he's got red hair. That was the cover for the CD that came out in the late 90s called Being Music. Yeah.
I bet we could find a copy on eBay or something.
Yeah, sure. I see him pop up all the time.
Yeah. So it was a busy time for Clive. He was not only painting a lot, he was writing. He was writing Sacrament in 96. He was doing Lord of Illusions in 95. He was doing, Freaks, that... haunted house thing,
the Halloween Horror Nights.
Yeah. So Clive was, at his prime here. He was like really kicking butt.
Yeah, he even says 30 paintings became 50, 50 pictures became 100. So once he started, he couldn't stop.
How optimistic is that? 30 became 50, and then he ended up making almost 500.
Yeah.
Well, in the first Abarat book, they say has 100 large paintings and then like 30 more of the little ones.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And then it's like I see another part here, and I think it's in the next volume where he talks about, well, I got 380 paintings now. And then I see the artist's passion, and he's talking about, I have 450 paintings. And it's like, wow, how many did you make?
I think there was total over maybe just under 1,000, I think, because a lot of them were Not Abarat, but I just mean the large.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the large canvas pieces total, I think, was like almost 1,000 pieces.
Wow. That tracks. Yeah, I could see that. Amazing.
Yeah,
stuff.
It's incredible.
Amazing. So yeah, go ahead.
Well, the book opens, and I put this one on my list anyway, even though it's the opener. They always pick a really strong painting for the opening, the very first one. And so the first one they have here is Icon. And it was bugging me for a while trying to remember where I saw this before, but it's the cover of Visions of Heaven and Hell, right?
This was...
I know this was it was a poster. I have the poster for a gallery. I don't remember the gallery exhibition.
Okay.
But it is a poster.
I think this might be in an art book or something like that. I remember seeing this in a cover somewhere.
It is in Visions of Heaven and Hell, but it's not the...
it's not the cover.
No.
It's not the cover.
The cover is a triptych that you see in here further ahead.
Yeah.
I think.
So this is the figure of a man standing there with his hands in his pockets, and his body, his torso is a face.
Mm-hmm.
It's like another man's face, with a beard and kind of hanging. His belly is the chin kind of hanging down over.
Am I crazy, or is this one in Russell Charrington's collection?
It is. It is.
Yeah. I think I remember seeing this in his collection.
There's quite a few that are in Russell's collection in this volume.
Yeah. That's one of his most well-known, one of the named paintings. And, for sure this is a great opener to the book.
Well, it in tying back into the thematic elements of the flesh, I mean, his flesh is actually, a face, whereas his actual face, it's more of a demonic countenance.
Yeah, it's more like hair.
That's what I was thinking too. It's dark like it's his hair, but it's also a face.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A wonderful, wonderful painting, Icon. Definitely something you can find when you look around for Clive Barker's art on the internet.
Apparently, it's also on clivebarker.info. It's another subname for it was self-portrait. So I wonder if the face on the torso was a self-portrait of Clive.
I could certainly see that. Yeah. And the eyes and the nose and the
nose,
goatee.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. There are some amazing, paintings in here.
Yes.
Some of them I've never seen before, which is the good part about these volumes is that so many here that I'm seeing for the first time. I do have a striking one here that I would like to bring up, which is this Untitled Triptych here on page, let's see.
That's the one that's on
872?
Yes, from 2007.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah, that is my first listed as well.
Yeah.
And this was used on the boxes for the tarot cards.
Yes.
That he sold.
And this was a piece that I had never seen until this volume, and I was absolutely blown away when I saw it.
It's so esoteric, right? It's got like the moon and the sun, and there's almost like a reinvention of the Tree of Life in a way. There's several spheres.
Oh, yeah, interesting.
Yeah, it's like you're looking into divinity or some sort of all-encompassing magic.
Yeah, at the center you have this silhouetted figure who is on fire, and the flames are going up into the spheres that are both the sun and the moon. And then adjacent to that, on the left and the right, you have these spherical wombs that are growing tendrils of color on each side, and it's a really remarkable piece. And then on the left and the right, you have these glyphs of just color that are amazing.
There was some sort of holiness to this whole thing. There's some sort of very primal, almost like I just came out of writing that blog article about that metaphysics of light, wisdom, and sound.
Yes,
and this strikes me in the same vein of being almost an all-encompassing one moment where you can see some sort of representation of almost reality. It's a beautiful. That's why I picked
Ryan,
it. Yeah.
like you said, it is like a glimpse at divinity. You know, it's peeking past the veil of reality into, you know, the platonic form of what's, you know, actually beyond our conception.
And it all stems from this human figure.
Yeah,
so it's
from the one figure. Yeah. The funny thing, you brought up the artist's passion. Is that the video that was on the Midnight Meat Train?
I think so. Yeah. Where he opens the door and he's got all these paintings on his hallway and he's got the sleeveless shirt and he's just talking about it. Yeah.
Yeah. If you watch the part where he goes out to the tent and he calls it like the island of the fucked or however he refers to it in regards to the things that were lost. The centerpiece of this triptych is in that tent.
Oh,
so
is it?
So there was a point where you can see the sun and the moon and those main glyphs in the middle. It was unfinished, but so there was at some point where Clive thought that this was lost, and then it went from that to this remarkable piece of art.
That is crazy. That this was at one point for salvage.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I mean, the cover of The Creature, the Painter, and the Father of Lies.
That was another one, yes.
That was another one, yeah. I mean, you can still see it in the impasto. He just painted white, whatever was underneath it, and he just drew that other face on top of it.
Yeah.
But that was, you know, he keeps mentioning, I think it might be, I'm jumping ahead on 6.
Yeah, that's in volume 6.
Yeah.
But that just goes to show, you know, and that's what makes that piece, too, is seeing that texture underneath.
And I'm not sure if we're talking about the same video because I don't remember him going to a tent in The Artist's Passion. I think that's not the same one on Midnight Meat Train.
Is The Artist's Passion the Abarat one where he's painting? I think it's.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just like maybe 8 minutes or something. So I'll put a link to it in the show notes. But that video on Midnight Meat Train, it's also pretty amazing. When he talks about, is that the one where he says that as a gay man, he's not going to have kids, and these things are like
okay. That one, it's called The Man Behind the Myth, and that is my personal favorite video of Clive. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I love that one. You see like the paper plates with the paints, and you know at the end he kind of signs one, and
he makes a spiral, and he starts talking about how.
Yes, I love that segment. That whole segment is so wonderful to look at. What was it called again?
The Man Behind the Myth. I watch that video every couple months just because it really reinvigorates my own,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
My own artistic drive to, you know, want to create.
Absolutely. That is, I was very stricken by that. That was from 2008. Okay, cool. I think I might have found it. I'll add that one to the show notes as well.
Okay.
That's really cool. Awesome.
So, Markus, do you have one?
I
was about to go to my next one, but it's like, well, you haven't said one yet.
One of the ones that I do have is on 901. It's called Brother Plato, Right or Wrong. And it's not one of my personal favorite paintings, but the reason why I think another alternate name for it is the Gay Boys, I think, from CliveBarker.info. But one thing that I was stricken by was the name of it, Brother Plato, Right or Wrong, which is the opening of a poem that Clive wrote. And seeing, there's a couple pieces that I look at and I know or I feel were either inspired by some of his short stories or some of his poetry. And in one project that I don't know if it has even been considered, but I would really love to see is a book of juxtaposing Clive's poetry with Clive's paintings, such as the Brother Plato, Right or Wrong, which I do have the poem here. It's pretty short. It just reads, Brother Plato, right or wrong, says the tribe where I belong is a family of souls in two, me a half, another you. Let's stay together one tonight and prove our brother Plato right.
Wonderful. Yeah. I think the closest you can get to what you want is probably Rare Flesh.
Yeah, which is where the poem comes from. You know, and that's David Emilian Armstrong's photography with Clive's poetry. But there's no actual just book of Clive's poetry, which I really wish there was, especially accompanied by paintings such as this. Would be really remarkable. It'd be
a good idea.
It'd be a very Blakean project come to fruition, similar to Abarat, but with poetry and paintings.
That's a great idea.
Phil and Sarah, you know what to do.
Yeah, they're probably frowning right now, saying, we're already doing that.
Yeah, probably. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
This painting almost looks like something out of the Scarlet Gospels, like a tribe of demons or something in like the Planitia, umbral plains or whatever. And what a beautiful painting that you picked. It was also in my list of paintings that struck me a lot because of the title and because of what they look like. Yeah,
their heads are all aflame, and the flames are becoming a filigree in the sky that's kind of lighting the sky on fire. It kind of does have this Scarlet Gospels-y feel to it, which there's another piece in here. I don't have it...
881?
Yeah, the Unconsumed, which, makes me think of the actual character, the Unconsumed from the Scarlet Gospels, which is another remarkable painting.
Yeah, I think it's not directly connected to him because I think the Unconsumed in that book was supposed to be completely carbonized and black. So, but definitely this is a very shamanistic, again, painting of a man on fire, and his robes are something that looks like they're not just robes; they're also a part of his, projection of himself.
Yeah.
They're very symbolic.
Yeah, and he doesn't have pupils or anything. Even his eyes are kind of alight with filigree behind him.
Did we move on to another painting?
Yeah. Sorry, that was on 881. Sorry.
Yeah, he's almost like a totem figure. In his verticality and the way that his body is. Just a big, tall, phallic shape. Oh, yeah. I guess you can't run away from that.
Yeah.
Yep. Hang on,
Brian. What's your next one?
My next one is actually kind of similar to this one. On 869, there is light in him still.
Oh yes.
It's a really striking picture. I love the. It looks like some sort of a devil or demon with fire all around him, but his the light. There's light coming out of his eyes and mouth. I'm guessing that's what the title's referring to.
Yeah,
the idea that there's something redeemable in everyone.
That's a really beautiful way to look at that. I really like that.
Were you talking about 869?
Yes.
Yeah. There's light in him still.
It's almost like you look at it and it seems like there's a shape of a body there that you can barely discern. Yeah. But at the same time, it looks like it's just a lamp head hanging from the ceiling.
Yeah, almost like a.
I hadn't seen it that way.
So it's almost like this kind of ghostly figure kind of inhabiting this almost like desiccated head. Yeah,
and it's a 48 by 60 canvas, so you have a 4 foot by 5 foot canvas, and
wow.
And most of it is just color, whereas the only real focal point is that lamp of a head.
Yeah, and then this totem shape on the side.
Yeah, on the right side.
Yeah, looks like part of a frame or something, but at the same time, who knows? And then I love that after an interesting, striking painting or a triptych, they follow up with 2 large pages of full blown,
detail,
which might be actual size for all I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it gives you an idea of how this would look like as a close up, because sometimes, the devil's in the details, and in Clive's painting, you really need to have a close look to see the texture of the painting. So good job on that choice of putting these giant blown up details. They're just so amazing.
Yeah, it looks really cool.
It's almost fresh. It feels like if you touch it, you're going to get ink on your finger.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and there's an illusion of the texture. Just looking at this face, like around the left side of the mouth there, it really looks like you could touch that, and it's raised up above the rest.
Yeah.
One just flat paper.
Yeah.
What's next on your list, Ryan?
Well, this one was mine.
Okay, gotcha. What about you, Markus?
My next one is going to be page 908 to 910. It's another triptych. This one is called Thus, and this was another piece that I had never seen before. And unfolding the 30-inch gatefold and seeing this unwieldy beast in all its glory just here on the paper was pretty mind-blowing. So I can't even imagine what seeing this, set up on easels and seeing it in its real form would be like. But it's such an amazing piece. And I know that in an interview that Phil and Sarah did with Clive, he talks about this piece in particular. Mm-hmm. And how he was
on the revelatory interview, right? This was where they were talking about how this book was coming along and how impressive this particular gatefold was. Yes, and he talks about how this piece was actually beginning to get away from him, and he was beginning to overwork it, which sometimes artists have a tendency to do. You think something could be better, or it's never finished. Whereas Phil and Sarah, I guess, looked at it and they said, "No, Clive, it's finished." And so he says that they kind of saved him from overworking it. But it's such an amazing piece. You have this godlike figure. The figure's not in the center. They're kind of off center to the right, but they're kind of holding court to this metaphysical holy battle. Where on the left side of the canvas you have these more dark,
yellowish.
Yeah, it's like yellow and black colors. There's one face that's kind of outlined in white that looks very skeletal, very demonic, and just all these crazy colors. And then on the right side you have a figure who looks like he's holding some sort of spear or staff, and he's kind of jabbing it into that yellow and black color and kind of holding it at bay.
Yeah, on the right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's just another one of those really metaphysical, divine pieces that really it's something that you look at it and you go, how the hell did one person bring this into fruition? Like, where do you start? And the close-up images on the following pages just showing the detail of you can see a mouth here and an eye there, and just the amount of detail and paint and texture that went into this thing. It's just gobsmacking.
And this is one, same here. I'd never seen this one before until just a couple of days ago, opening up the Imagineer 5 for the first time. And I put this on my list too because it is so impressive and really there's so much to look at.
I guess me 3 because it was also on my list.
Fantastic.
So I think that's a testament to how striking and so how vibrant this painting is. It's like a tribe of Aztecs fighting a bunch of Olmecs or something. I don't know. It definitely depicts a battle, and the main figure he looks like almost like a tribal leader with a giant headdress. Yeah,
there's some sort of like totem-like headdress. Fixed upon him, and maybe there's an angel with a wing spread out to his right. There's so much, and I don't know. It's really remarkable. And again, this is a piece that, as far as I know, you can only really see in this Imagineer volume.
I love the use of color in this, and I love the way that he melded all these shapes together, made them flow in such an organic protean way. It's like it's supposed to be the robe of the shaman or the tribal leader or something, but at the same time, it looks like it's come alive. It looks like those robes that are made with medallions, bones, feathers. All these vibrant trinkets that just make it just come alive. And
or a carpet that's come to life.
Yeah, or a carpet. Good one.
Sorry.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. That's and the enemy is just this misshapen like bunch of hands and fingers and teeth and horns and
this primordial chaos that has no real no real body. It's not tangible. It's very
I love that you said a primordial chaos. That looks like what it is.
Yeah. It's a piece that you look at it and you think how easily it could have gone wrong. That easily trying to make something this massive, this detailed, this colorful, it could have just become a mess, and it's not. It's perfect in my opinion.
It is, yeah. I have a painting I would like to bring up here. Yes. Which actually reminded me of another painting. I was looking at some Goya paintings today while I was looking at this, and I came across one that was done during the Black Paintings that Goya did. Yeah. And it is called Despair, and it is...
yes.
What page is it on?
I think it's more in the beginning.
It slipped away from me here. Hang on.
I was going to list that one too, and I didn't.
And Despair, and as by synchronicity, by an amazing serendipity, I was looking at this painting, and I had another book open.
$8.95 if you hadn't found it yet.
Thank you very much, Markus. So $8.95. Yes, there's a painting that Goya did called Dog, or Drowning Dog, or Submerged Dog.
I've seen it. I'm Googling it now. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead and do that, because it thematically matches this one. The colors almost seem to match it as well. Mm-hmm. And it just conveys the same feeling to me that I do as looking at that particular Goya painting. And it's just such a visceral reaction that I get at looking at this painting. Just the same as I do at the dog who's like struggling to keep his head out of the sandpit. The same thing with this guy. He's just sitting there, and his mouth is agape, and you can't tell if he's screaming, if he's just crying, if he's silently screaming. But it's, I think, of a figure that maybe if you're fortunate you haven't, but I think some of us have done this at some point where we feel completely lost and in despair, and we don't know what's going to happen, and we don't know why this is happening to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he also appears to be a hollow figure. He has a hole missing from the center of his chest.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
I never noticed that until you mentioned it. That's interesting. I thought it was just a shadow and a light thing going on. But now that you mentioned it, that is absolutely what it is.
Yeah. So it's a very, very hollow, empty feeling of just utter despair. So the name is perfect for the piece.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it is very evocative of Goya's Black paintings for sure.
Mm-hmm. But he did that at a time when he was deaf and living in a place called the Villa del Sordo, which means the villa of the deaf guy, because it belonged to another deaf guy that sold it to him. Yeah,
and he had no intention of showing those paintings to the world. He painted them on his walls, and no one knew that they were there till after he was dead.
Exactly. It was just his way of dealing with the feelings that were inside him at the time. So that's another one. Despair, $8.95.
$8.87.
887.
Untitled.
Yes.
Okay.
Trying to find it. Maybe we'll discover that we already talked about that also.
No, we haven't talked about this one yet.
Okay.
What's it called? It's Untitled. Okay.
Yeah, it looks like some kind of an aberration beast, right, with people riding on it.
Oh yeah. Look at that thing. It's amazing. It looks almost like one of those Chinese dragons.
Yeah. Oh yeah. From like New Year's.
Yeah. How cool is that? And these bluish figurines on top of it, and their hair is just scratches. It's just Clive scratching them out with a palette knife or a steak knife or whatever.
Yeah. They almost look like goblins or something.
Yeah. What a fabulous beast. again, you look at this, and this is a wonderful vignette. It's a mysterious vignette. Who are these guys? Who is this creature? What are they doing? Where your brain wants to know.
And the countenance is more human-like than the actual creatures that are writing said creature.
Yeah. They don't seem to have much of a face. They don't seem to have eyes. And this creature is almost like a kind of a Abaratian manticore of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Almost like
He looks like he's got some kind of spiky tail.
Yeah.
You should use this for an RPG monster, Ryan.
Yeah. I think that was what made me pick it.
That's funny.
Yeah. It's almost like the three blind mice, but they're the three blind goblins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of them is holding like a torch of fire.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And maybe that is trying to illuminate their sight, even though they appear almost eyeless. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. This is another amazing painting that you look at it and you want to know, what is this? Is this part of a story? What's the story behind it? And it's like sometimes there's no story. It's just a vignette that bubbled out of. It's just another creature that bubbled out, of that ocean that Clive, has in his head. Amazing.
Maybe it will end up in an Abarat.
Yeah, who knows?
I'm sure it will eventually.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Whose turn is it?
You can go ahead, Markus. Do you have any other favorites in this one?
I have 3 more listed. I don't know how many you guys have left.
I have 3 more also.
Okay. One of them is on 989.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called Golgotha. And one of the... Yeah, and the main reason why I listed it is we've talked before of how there's certain pieces that don't look like they are quote-unquote Barkerian in their actual... not construction, but just the way that they're painted, and just the looseness of this piece is what was really striking. And when I was first looking at it, I didn't see much. I didn't see really any forms or anything. It's very loose. And upon looking at it more, before I even read the name, it looks like a guy who could quite possibly be being crucified.
Yeah, yeah.
It
looks like
and that's exactly what it is. Yeah, it's Jesus, on the cross being crucified with the two
thieves.
Yes, the 2 thieves adjacent to him, and just it really reminds me of certain Francis Bacon pieces in the way that it's actually painted.
Oh.
And there's also a detail on the following page, and I don't know. It's really interesting to see something that stands apart from a lot of the rest of Clive's style. To see something that's really, really different.
Mm-hmm. And I could see that.
Yeah.
Because the shapes are very loose, like you said. They're very loose in terms of anatomy, or in terms of figuratively speaking, they're very loose.
Yeah.
But then you have this overpowering rectangle of red, which is almost like the tree where Christ is red with blood. Yeah. But that is kind of like, reminds me a little bit of the Francis Bacon thing, where he has a big patch of a big vibrant color, like an orange or something. In this case, it's a red. And then these shapes that look like they're almost inside out of sorts, it's
it's a very visceral looking piece, but if you just first glance at it, you don't know why it looks so visceral. And then when you start really scrutinizing it more, and you start saying, "Oh, this is a person in a certain way," and then you realize, "Oh, this person's being crucified. Oh, this is Jesus being crucified." And you start seeing it more, and
you see the crown of thorns, even though it's just some brushwork. And then here on the left, I see the figure of one of the thieves nailed to the tree, but not crucified necessarily.
Yeah.
Amazing. Very, very striking. I did look at this one, and I did see it, and I was like, oh, this is something different. I didn't really see Clive do a lot of this before.
Yeah. And it really reminded me of Francis Bacon, which is why it stood out so much.
And they picked this one to have this giant detail, 2-page detail. So amazing. Very, very beautiful painting. I have another one here. I do have some that are classics, of course. There's the Beautiful Moment triptych. I mean, that's, you got to talk about that one.
Yeah.
There's a part
962, right?
Yeah, I think
and
so.
that also gets 2 detail, well, technically 4 detail pages, but 2 separate detail shots. Which it's entirely worthy of that for sure.
Yeah.
It's amazing because I think this might be even bigger than actual size, the details. So you get to see how much Clive puts into this. You see this one detail here with the island that has the circus tent. Is that supposed to be the nuns? I'm not sure. No, this is the one where Candy and the
this is from Abarat too.
Malengo.
Yeah.
They go to the theater, right?
Yeah. With the freaks, right?
Yeah. Babylonian. So, but hey, you look at this beautiful painting here, the Islands of the Abarat, and it's interesting because I thought that this was called The Beautiful Moment. Instead, it's been retitled, or maybe I didn't have it right, as The Islands of the Abarat, and that's from 1999. So, this is almost as big as the Metaphysics of Light, Wisdom, and Sound. So that's 228 by 96, and it's a triptych. It's done in 3 giant canvases, and I think there was a flooding in the studio at one point, and unfortunately, one or 2 panels got a little bit of water damage, but you can't tell that on this one. This probably was done before that. The photos, maybe not. But in any case, that is another wonderful painting here.
Yeah.
It always struck me as when you look at the moon is hollow. There's a hole in the middle of the moon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Looks like it's made out of cheese. But this is it. This is the Book of Hours. This is the 25 Islands of the Abarat. And you see not just the moon, the sun, but the comet and the pyramids of Zuxux. I don't know if you say it that way. But it's just such a beautiful thing. It's just a world waiting to be told. Clive has I think it's on the next volume. He talks about when he was doing an exhibit of Abarat paintings, and he saw a kid just standing in front of this triptych, and he stood next to the kid. And he was just looking at it. The kid was just looking at the painting with big eyes, and he was like, "That was the best moment of the whole exhibit, was to see that kid just look at that painting." And
I think he even goes as far as to say it was worth the effort of the entire painting.
Yeah.
Was just to see the expression on that child's face that day.
Yeah. And this is a painting that strikes not just kids, but this is an 8 to 80 kind of thing.
Well, all 3 of us have seen this in person, and all 3 of us can attest that seeing this piece in person is especially jaw-dropping.
Yeah.
So now that this painting exists in digital form and was put in this book, Phil and Sarah, when are you guys going to sell a poster of this on the Clive Barker archive?
Yes, this in the thus piece. That is a tongue twister to say.
Yeah.
Thus,
Interested parties want to throw money at you. Please make it happen.
Yeah. Well, now that they're freed up from the Imaginer project, I mean, can you imagine all the new stuff that's going to come out?
I know that they're working on a companion piece to the Imaginer volumes that will. I think it's just more to be able to find the pages of paintings that you like. So,
like an index book?
Yeah.
Huh,
so I think that's what they're working on next.
Oh, wow.
That's going to be useful.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yes, because there's many times where I want to see a painting and I'm like, I don't remember which book it's in. But,
another painting, I'll just be real brief, but another painting that struck me immediately when I opened up Days of Magic, Knights of War, Abarat 2, was Lazaru and Baby Pink Eye.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, this was a rescued canvas that he painted over, I think. I don't know where I heard that.
What page is it on in here?
1000. Yeah. 1011.
Are we talking about in book 6?
No, this isn't.
No, in book 5.
Oh, okay.
Lazaru and Baby Pink Eye. They're in the antechamber when the crisscross man is about to go talk to Christopher Carey, and they're kind of scaring him a little bit.
Yeah, they're taunting him.
Yeah. Like these two characters, I was so freaked out by this painting when I opened the book, and I stared at this for a long time, and I was like, oh man, this painting gives me the chills.
Yeah, imagine if you're like an 8-year-old.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have a creature that Lazaru. It appears that one of his eyes has been taken, and then he has 2 eyes fixed atop his head instead. And he has stitching and these bugs crawling all over his body.
Yeah. And Baby Pink Eye looks like a Harlequin baby.
And he's got flippers for hands.
Yeah, these amphibian, almost like Creature from the Black Lagoon hands. It probably is a rescued canvas, though, because, in the back you have all these yellows and these different colors that Clive has brought through with the steak knife. Yeah.
So. And that's another thing he does in The Artist's Passion. He talks about while he's working on a painting, he says, well, look at this. Like now I got, I like to scrape the canvas, and you sometimes scrape it this yellow, and then all of a sudden you start seeing this blue underneath from another layer of paint. And it's,
he mentions that he's a vegetarian, and so the only use he has for steak knives is for painting.
That's funny. And another painting here that struck me as hard to see as a Clive Barker painting was the one afterwards, which is on page 1013, which is the morning of Christ's nativity. It's such an idyllic, such a normal, and I use the word normal freely, but a normal painting of this beautiful island with a couple of palm trees and a little chapel. Yeah.
Well, the brushstrokes are a lot calmer. You don't have like that thick impasto upon the piece.
No, not a single scratch of the palette knife, but definitely on the palm tree you can tell that this is Clive Barker's art, and just this beautiful idyllic like landscape. Looks like Clive went to South America and he painted something out of his veranda or something. It's, it's a beautiful painting.
Isn't this it's an actual painting in Abarat? It's either Abarat 1 or Abarat 2, I believe. But it's a painting that perhaps it's Candy is looking at, and it's hung up. But I know it's actually supposed to be a painting within Abarat.
Maybe at the hotel when she's looking at the room where
possibly.
The ghost exists.
Yeah, possibly.
Huh. That's interesting. I could swear I'd never seen it before. So anyway, very lovely use of color here. The blues and the oranges and the ochres and the yellows. And I wouldn't mind having this on my wall. I really would.
Yeah.
And my next one is going to be complete opposite of that painting, Comexo City on 926.
That's another triptych, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Industry, urban.
Yeah. With permanent daylight, artificial daylight, even though it's a nighttime.
This is midnight, or no, this isn't midnight. What time is it?
1 or 3 in the morning. I can't remember.
Something like that. Yeah.
So it makes him a neighbor to midnight.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's 1 o'clock in the morning.
Okay. It's a great piece. It's another one of those that the detail is so immense that you think like it could have become a mess, but it's not. It's perfect.
Yeah.
There's so much, and the detail page on the next is really gives you a look at how much detail is there, because just seeing it from afar, there's so much to take in.
It's so busy, but it never gets muddy. It just becomes complex and stimulating to look at.
That's a really, really good way to put that.
Yeah, it's very stimulating to look at, and then the details, amazing. You see all these giant buildings with little walkways, and you can see little people walking on the walkways, little smudges of paint that I'm saying they're people because that's your brain like saying, oh, those are people, clearly. And it's nothing but like a couple of threads of a brush that did a little smudge there, and that's the beauty of art. You just interpret it in your own way, and you make an entire world out of it.
Yeah.
An interesting duo here on page 936, 937, which is the Holy Mother and the Patriarch.
Oh yes, I especially love the Patriarch.
936 and 937.
Yeah. They look like they look like they could be in a tarot deck, and I probably are. I don't know.
Well, yeah, that's another thing that I really like about Phil and Sarah's books since they took over, is that their layout and their placement of pieces is really, really fascinating. Like for 932 and 933, you have Hellcat and Look Away, and just the color of the stripes in Look Away kind of matches Hellcat, and they do the same thing with the Patriarch.
Is Look Away one of the ones that Russell had?
Yes.
Yeah.
It also became a mask.
Yeah, not to go off track on the Patriarch and the Holy Mother, but just the placement of the juxtaposition and the
absolutely,
the
it's totally
of the pieces.
Totally handpicked, beautiful thing. Sometimes you have to put things together to see if they go well, and in this case, these paintings are they go extremely well together. Like the Matriarch, the Holy Mother, and the Patriarch. Not that they're matching each other in terms of color or in terms of composition, but just thematically they belong together.
Yes. Yeah. You have this in the Patriarch. You have this
imposing figure. I mean,
you have this infant who's almost in a fetile position inside of this dark abyss, this pit, with this looming, monstrous, this gangly, this very lanky creature with this very large erection, and of course the penis is also looming down into the pit, and the Patriarch is holding a knife in one hand and the hand is reaching into the pit to grab the infant in another.
It's like a precursor to Saturn eating his son.
I was just about to say that, going back to Goya, but
right. I mean, you can't get away from that. It's just. And I wonder, I would love to have Clive and pick his brain and say, hey, Clive, were you thinking about Saturn eating his son when you were doing this? Because it just looks like it's totally connected to that.
Yeah, it's like pulling him out of a womb, it looks like.
Yeah.
That's one beautiful way to, you could think of it even being sexual in the fact that you have a knife and an erect penis both reaching towards this chasm, so it's almost like a penetration, right? So I mean, there are a lot of different ways that you could.
It's very imposing. Yeah, it's a very imposing figure. And like Ryan, you said, pulling him out of a womb. So is the knife going to be for a sacrifice? Is the knife going to be to cut an umbilical cord? Who knows, right? I mean, it's up to each interpretation to figure out what's going on in this painting.
Yeah, I don't even think the infant
is he rescuing him from a hole that he fell into? It's,
Well, that's the thing, is also in the Patriarch's face. I mean, you can read several things. You can read anger. You can read apathy. It's kind of whatever you want to put upon the countenance, because the actual expression is kind of blank.
And just the physicality of the Patriarch is also, like the way the dangling penis is going into the hole. It's pointing right at the kid, like, hey, that it's just very, very imposing figure. But it is called the Patriarch, so you can and excellent uses of negative space here.
Yes.
Not just because everything else is white, it's just unpainted canvas, but then here you see that he's crouching down and you see his leg and is bending at the knee, and then his arm holding the knife is actually making the shape of his body in the back.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So there's no shading there for the hip or the butt cheeks. It just kind of fades away, and the arm makes the shape of the rest of the body. So I particularly like that. And of course, the Holy Mother. The connection to the bosom, the connection to this. This vagina and anus that are just here in the front of the body, and these wings.
Yeah, and the vagina is in the center of the chest. It's it's above the navel and below the sternum, and then you have the squirting of the milk into these bird-like children.
Very misshapen children, but there's a kind of a nurturing notion, floating in this painting, whereas the patriarch is more intimidating in a way. Yes. And the mother is looking away from the kids, and then the patriarch is looking straight at the kid in the whole, like it's looming over him. Whereas the mother is just, she's letting it happen, and the patriarch is actually reaching in, so he's taking action.
Yes.
So I mean, we could analyze this stuff all.
Oh yes, for hours,
ages and ages and ages. I mean, there's so many excellent paintings in this volume, and subverted things like. There's a bridge city, page.
Yeah.
It's a bridge, but it's not leading from a city to another city. The bridge is the city.
Yeah.
It's on page 957, 58, 56, 57, 956, 957. Just so much good stuff in here. It's just tremendous. And, of course, I have to bring up the print that came with the book that has this very strange bird-like creature.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Is that one of the ones you framed?
No, not yet. No. It was the one with the red trees, sky, and then the figure that has the seashells and the palm trees.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. That was wonderful. Like, Sarah did that for me.
She did a wonderful job. They look beautiful.
Yeah, right. I mean, she even did the hand-painted mats for the paintings.
Yeah, those look amazing.
She's amazing.
It's wonderful.
And since this is 1993, 2012, that's this volume, but they talk a lot about 95, 96. There's a painting of Galilee here on page 1003. Yes. And it's not a figurative painting. It's more like it's a painting of what... It's a painting of Galilee's soul, I would say. It's almost like the painting of Galilee's...
His quintessence, his
yes. Thank you. Quintessence, yeah. Because he is a member of the Barbarossas.
Yes.
And as such, he was, who knows how old he is. He's the son of demigods. So I love the way that he painted his quintessence, like you said, to have all these colors and all these beautiful streaks of color.
Yeah, and Clive purposefully leaves the background just a blank white. That way it doesn't take away from the actual colors of Galilee.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a beautiful piece.
My last one is Harks Harbor.
Oh, yes.
On 890.
And this is another gatefold, correct?
Yeah.
So the gatefolds.
You've got Harks Harbor, a.k.a. Chicken Town, on the left side there, and then the grass sort of just seamlessly merges into waves of water for the Sea of Isabella, and there's a huge ship there. So, meaning this is probably a time when Harks Harbor used to be open for trade. And,
yes,
and there's a big seafaring. Gigantic sailboat that's headed in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The greens of the field slowly fade away and into the sea, and the only hint of green that you really get within the sea are the two fish that Clive is painted in.
Oh,
when you have
I missed
light.
Those. Where are the fish?
They are below the boat on the right, within the water.
Oh,
they're pretty faint, but. Yeah,
there they are.
A beautiful, beautiful piece. You could take any section of this triptych and just and that would be enough.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you've got the purple roiling clouds that kind of connect, right? They connect Harks Harbor on Earth, across the sea,
to the here,
over to the islands. It looks like.
And I love Clive's nightscapes.
Yeah,
they're just the use of color, and it's so calming, so peaceful. Even though that there's like these hints of lightning and possible thunder, there's something about it that's really ethereal and magical and full of serenity.
And again, it's in the middle of a plain, in the middle of nowhere, and there's a dock. There's a dock there, which is what sets Candy and her, trip into the mysterious when the waters come of the Sea of Isabella.
And this is another piece that I think if they were to make a print, it would sell like hotcakes.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. Like who wouldn't want to see this hanging on their wall? It's beautiful.
I totally agree.
We need to have more Clive Barker posters. That's what we're getting out of these books.
Yes.
I have no space left on my walls, but yes, please bring more.
Yeah.
I don't care. I have just I guess you can say there's two, but I think of them as one, and they're on page 1024 and 1025.
1000.
And they are Genesis and Revelation.
Could you tell me the numbers again?
1024 and 1025.
Thank you. Okay.
They are.
Yeah. These
two circular canvases, which I've never really seen. I've tried to find them to buy them, but they're pretty hard to come by. And it not only is it a different shape that Clive is painted on, but the actual configuration of both paintings is so remarkable and so interesting. Of that, you have
so beautiful.
These different. Oh, go ahead.
Isn't Revelation hanging up in the studio where he paints, like as you're coming down the stairs on the wall on the right there?
Both times that I was there, it wasn't hanging up. One time I didn't see it, and then the other time it was in the storage area. But yeah, I've seen Revelation. I've never seen. No, maybe I have seen Genesis. I don't remember. But
these should be windows in the chapel of our imagination.
Yeah,
that's all I gotta say.
Yeah.
Well, you look at Genesis, and it's this Abaratian evolution of, there's almost like a big bang in the center, in that it's almost this minuscule dot, and from that springs all of this beautiful life of
diversity and nature.
You're seeing evolution unfold, before your eyes, of just, you're going to lizards, to these more bird-like figures, and the fishes on the outer,
and all the small critters in the concentric rings in between.
Yeah, and just the amount of detail of, it's remarkable. And the same goes for Revelation, except for Revelation is a far more transcendental, spiritual piece of.
With the fire, the spiritual fire in the middle.
It reminds me of the Divine Comedy, in that you're starting in the Inferno, and then you go to Purgatory, and then you're in Paradise, and that these
little spheres of these icons around it. All these orbiting things around it.
You're going from flame to almost these church stained glass like reliefs. And then you're going out into these metaphysical, abstract glyphs of imagination.
Yeah, there's some faces there. There's like what looks like a face wearing a feathered headgear, and on the bottom there, on the bottom concentric ring, there's almost like a Aztec kind of mask, an Aztec kind of glyph.
So I mean, you could think of it in that it's representing all religions, all ideologies, all it's not just the biblical revelation. It's It's a human revelation. It's a spiritual revelation.
Yeah, absolutely. These spherical ones are so amazing.
Yeah, I mean, beautiful. On the left you have the biological, you have the physical, the flesh, and on the right you have the spiritual.
Yeah,
and both are transcending from this primordial thing into something far greater.
The page before that, no, that's not. That's guilt, red-handed guilt right there.
Oh, yes.
But 1021, the gods are in the mountains.
This was another one I had marked, but I wasn't going to list it because I didn't want
Reminds me a little bit of Mark Tanzi. I don't know if you're familiar with Mark Tanzi. He's an American painter.
No, not at all.
From San Jose, California. But he does have a tendency to paint in monochrome. So sometimes he makes painting they're like completely blue or completely red or completely pink, and they're usually more like landscape paintings. So this one looks like a Mark Tanzi painting because it's all done in blue, and I like the glacial, the cold feeling of it. Like it looks like mountain crests where it's really cold and snowy and made of ice, and everything is. And the gods themselves have frozen on the mountaintops, like the ice giants of Jotunheim.
It's called no further, aka the gods are in the mountains.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When I look at it, I see a mixture of Tolkien of like the misty mountaintops with Giger, in that you have on the right. It looks like maybe 6 breasts that are composing this jutting spire. Yeah. But I love that piece to death. It's beautiful.
There are so many more that we can talk about for this volume, but really the best thing to do is buy the book.
Buy it, yes.
It's amazing.
And if you want to buy one from me from the Clive Barker podcast, we have some.
Message us.
Yeah.
The last one I just want to bring up just before we go into the final text that's in the ending here. Yes. But Untitled on page 1035 would make a tremendous book cover.
Yes. Yeah, it's amazing. It looks like some kind of a vampire.
Mm-hmm. It's just this golden-eyed cat-irised creature looking at you from behind a curtain. Maybe it's his hair. It looks just like someone peeking from behind a curtain.
It reminds me, for some reason when I look at it, I just think of The Great and Secret Show, in that there's, something hidden behind the facade of the curtain.
Oh,
yeah. Lovely. And then it ends with art is long and time is fleeting, or in Latin, ars brevis vita longus. And so there's a thing here I want to bring up, which says that Clive, in common with George R.R. Martin, Clive is much more of a gardener than an architect, and his garden flourishes. It's burgeoning, teeming, seething with life forms inspired by his love of the wonders of natural history. And one time,
who is an author that's an architect?
That's a good question.
Maybe like the Harry Potter books, would be something like that. I don't know.
No, I don't think she was an English teacher. She was an architect. You're talking about an author who is an architect?
No, because this idea of a gardener versus an architect.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Not literally. Got it.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
like somebody who really methodically plans out, from beginning to end, all the details.
Yeah. Without wanting to trigger all the Harry Potter fans, maybe J.K. Rowling would be more of an architect, because she established a whole mythology, very strict. It's a schoolmasters, lots of characters who have set occupations, and the story does go through all its beats, and there's a lot of planning into it, a lot of giant books.
Yeah.
So I guess early on that doesn't pay off until much later in the series.
Yeah. But this whole idea of more of a gardener, I did ask Clive once through Phil and Sarah about Imagica, and I think that was the 14th or 15th revelatory interview. Let's see. It was the 13th revelatory interview.
Okay.
titled "You Called, He Came." And at the time, remember when Phil and Sarah were taking questions from fans, and they would take those questions and call Clive at the end of the call, and they would ask him some stuff.
Yeah.
And I know I keep bringing this up, but it's like I just asked to Clive if with the Abarat project, and I asked him, was this the way that you let Abarat bloom out of your brain? Because I said, to me, Abarat is very Blake-like, as the writing and paintings create a total vision. I can see something of you in the character of Imagica, gentle, who finds a way to recover from his amnesia by taking up some chalks and start drawing the people and landscapes that he's seen in the Dominions, letting the images and stories pour out of his head and teach him how to connect it all together again. And then I say, drawing parallels with the Abarat project, was this the way you let Abarat bloom out of your brain? The paintings taking you by the hand to travel in the bestiary of the subconscious? And did the paintings surprise you, influencing the story into certain directions visually? And basically, Clive just said that he said, I love this question. I really, really love this question. Abarat is very Blake-like, creating a total vision. He's so right. It's so much of what I wanted these books to be. And as I move through 3, 4, and 5, he will see, and everybody will see me pushing hard to make those connections between the visual and the literary, tighter and stronger and more significant. And then he says, and he makes this gorgeous analogy with gentle, which is a beautiful point. It's just a beautiful question. I almost feel like every part of the question is rhetorical. Yeah. He's answered himself.
Because they're yes or no questions. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then he said, the only real question is, do the paintings surprise me? And the answer is, damn right they do. I'm producing pictures at quite a rate now, and I have the experience of going through paintings as they are taken away. And I say, take this away before I fuck with it. Just take it away. And I will not go to the gallery house for maybe a week or 10 days. And I will say, what is that? Obviously, I know it's my handiwork. I have a vague sense of where I was when I was making it. But when a gentleman was here recently talking to me about Prometheus, not only stealing fire, of course, for humanity, but also his blood producing flowers from the earth, which was something I didn't know. It turned out both images were – he's talking about another painting here. But he was talking about the Earth Martyr painting. So anyway, that's how I see it. I mean, I see Clive making his stories as letting these ideas, like, not just being fished out of, whatever fugue state he gets himself into, but also, he just lets the story sometimes blossom and bloom on its own. He lets the characters sometimes take him, and he's surprised by them. I mean, he's saying here he's surprised by the way the paintings took him in directions in the story of Abarat that he didn't even know. But he does on a subconscious level, of course.
Yeah, and he always says that the images come first.
Yeah. The image.
Yeah. One last thing I would like to plug, if I may.
Sure.
If anyone is interested in delving into more of Imagineer 5 and seeing some of the images that we've talked about and stuff, I do have a review up on clivecast.com that I did 2 years ago now.
Yeah, but right after the book came out.
Yeah, it's a very, very lengthy, really in-depth dive into the paintings and some of the introduction stuff. And if anyone wants to go down that rabbit hole any further, please read that.
Yeah. And I'll put a link to that in the show notes here.
Oh, awesome. Thank you, Ryan.
Yep. So that was Imagineer 5. As usual, we end up talking so much about each volume.
I know.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's good, but we're realizing now that to give these books their due, maybe it wasn't
just do single episodes at a time. It wasn't
realistic to think that we could do 2 books in every episode.
Yeah,
which is cool. I had no idea that talking about an art book, would take, would spring this much discussion. But I think it's awesome.
Well, one thing I really liked was that all 3 of us picked the same paintings several times, which was really nice.
Yeah.
Great minds think alike.
Yeah.
But yeah, getting to talk art with you guys is such a blast, and I'm sorry if I babble too much. But
no, not at all.
Really nice.
Yeah. And this podcast, having no beginning, will have no end. You can find the show notes for this episode and join the discussion over at www.clivebarkercast.com. We've got an archive of past episodes, news, features, and reviews, along with all the ways you can connect with us. You can subscribe on every other place you can find podcasts. Share your thoughts with us and share our podcast with your friends. The Clive Barker Podcast, or BarkerCast, is an independent editorial podcast and news blog that's not affiliated with or under contract by Clive Barker or Seraphim Inc. This is a labor of love by the fans for the fans.
Thanks for listening.